Hey Denchpegs, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and welcome to my review of the debut album from the American DJ and producer Borgeous. This one is called 13. Borgeous is a big EDM producer that I had a lot of respect for a long time. I'd even argue that he was one of my favorite main stage EDM producers for a good chunk of time. In fact, his big breakout single Tsunami with dubs was actually one of the first big room EDM songs I ever actually liked, next to Martin Garrix's Animals, Sandro Silva and Quintino's Epic, etc, etc, along with songs like Invincible, which at the time of its release was one of my favorite progressive house songs. But in time I lost both interest and respect over Borgeous as I realized that a good chunk of his music is ghost produced. But with the announcement of this album, there was a little spark. There was a bit of hope in me, just kind of hoping that Borgeous would be able to release something that would redeem my opinions on him. Although I definitely wanted it to be, I sadly can't say there was anything extremely redeeming about this album. Borgeous released a heap of singles leading up to this thing, primarily the song Ride It with Sean Paul, an artist who I probably haven't heard from in like 5 years, so I was really surprised to see him make an appearance on this one. But I wasn't extremely impressed with it, and part of that might be the nostalgia factor because I was mostly in love with his house songs, and with this one we see him expanding into a number of different genres. But the real question with this album is, do those genres make up for the spots that are extremely weak in this album? And I don't think they do extremely well. In some parts they definitely do, and I think the spots where he chooses to go out a little bit more is the spots that I like a little bit better on this one. I really wanted to love Ride It, but I honestly just thought it was a really weak Arabic-influenced trap song, and my opinions on that really aren't going to change. I tried it again and again, and I just can't get into it. On the other hand, I think there are a lot of really cool songs on this album, but sadly I don't think this is due to Borgeous, but rather his heap of collaborators on this thing. In fact, from my count anyway, I think he had 22 different collaborators on this thing, 23 if you include Riggy and Pyros as a duo. Although, like I said, it's not out of Borgeous' league to collaborate or have ghost producers on different projects. I think just with this one he chose to credit all of them. And with this one there are actually some really promising names, like Brooklyn, the new two-piece EDM duo that I've really been digging. They have a collaboration with this one with Lenachka, who did the vocals on their solo song Steal Your Heart, which although it's fairly new is probably one of my all-time favorite progressive house songs. If you haven't listened to that one, you absolutely have to. But with the return on both of them on this one, what I'm kind of hearing is a slightly weaker version of Steal Your Heart. I don't even think the vocal chops were as impressive on this one as they were on that one, although I really want to love this one. I just thought it was kind of weak. Riggy and Pyros is another one on this one that I was really looking forward to hearing. I've loved a lot of their singles in the last couple years, so I was definitely looking forward to their appearance on this thing. And with this one I actually feel like they didn't disappoint as much. Savage is a really cool track, and although I'd like to say I would have rather heard it as an instrumental because I didn't really love Lil Jon's appearance on this thing, I think it probably would have been a lot worse without Lil Jon's vocal sample in this one. Sadly, although I think they could have found a better appearance, I think it's at least okay. In another spot, we've got the hardstyle producer Jay Cosmic on this one, and I was actually really looking forward to this one a lot as well because he's probably my favorite hardstyle producer on the entire scene. I just thought overall his music is very strong. It has a lot of crossover appeal, something that I really dig when it comes to producers. The song's called Spitfire, and it features Raga Twins, who had a number of really great appearances on Skrillex's music on his last album, Recess. Although I sadly didn't think this appearance was that great either, especially the drum and bass drop. I felt like this one was very, very weak. On the hard dance drop, though, I felt like it definitely took more of Jay Cosmic's sound and incorporated it. But that's a big problem with this album, is that Borgeous takes these spots and these collaborators and lets them take control of the music, and you can't really hear his sound. In fact, I think the only songs that I can really hear Borgeous' signature styles is the 3-track streak of Satellite, Oceans, and We Are Young, which are all big room melodic progressive house songs, all which kind of seem to be worse than the last song. I think Satellite's probably the best produced one, although I really wanted to love Oceans and I really love the euphoric melodies in it. I just don't want to get into this cheesy style of progressive house. I'm trying to move out of that, although I did like it, I have to admit. It wasn't terrible. Other than that, toward the beginning of the album we get a couple collaborations with Tidy, both of which are fairly chill. Like I mentioned, he seems to let these collaborators kind of take over. I think the song Wanna Lose You, the biggest single right now on the album actually isn't too bad, and probably my favorite of their two collaborations. I really like the song Going Under a lot. It reminds me heavily of a lot of material that Disclosure has done, especially on their Settle album. A lot of artists in the future house scene have made a lot of vocal renditions of certain house songs, and I haven't really been a big fan of a lot of the results, especially like Tiesto and Oliver Heldens' The Right Song. I just honestly think a lot of those vocal appearances are really weak, but I really like the mixing on this track. I think the vocals work really well with the production, which made for it being one of my favorites. I also really like the track Lost and Found featuring Neon Hitch, although I didn't think her vocals were fantastic on this one. I actually really like the drop and the vocal chopping used in that, although the track heavily does remind me of Jack U's sound, which provides it to be a little bit annoying, especially since this is the only track that kind of goes into that style. It even has that little Jack U pluck that trap producers all across the scene have been using in the last year since the Jack U album came out. The song Higher, which is a collaboration with Landis, sounds like something that I would typically call one of my favorites, but I can just tell with my own taste in music that this thing isn't going to hold up as good as I think it is. It's kind of got a generic house melody, and honestly there's just not too much ground on this track holding it up. The last track that I want to talk about in this review is the song Explode featuring Fat Man Scoop, and I just think this song is hilarious because it sounds like a rejected version of Hardwell and WW's Don't Stop the Madness, which also featured Fat Man Scoop. It even has some of the same melodies in it, which is just, I don't know, cringeworthy. I don't really know how to explain how this thing, but if you listen to these back to back, you will definitely hear some similarities, and it's just very hard for me to listen to, especially because Fat Man Scoop has been so overused in the EDM scene ever since Skrillex's Recess came out. And I actually liked his appearance a lot in that track, but a lot of his recent stuff, especially his appearances with W&W and Hardwell, have just been so lackluster. Other than that, there's really just not much to say about this album. I really do appreciate the heart behind Borgeous trying to put out this debut album, but I just really didn't think it was too fantastic. I really like the spots where he pulls in a lot more diversity, and I think this album's major downfalls are that in the spots that he sticks too heavily to his roots kind of seem to fail in a way, and they're a little bit outdated, and then in other spots he's letting his collaborators control him too much. I really want to see Borgeous produce some new genres and be able to do that on his own terms rather than on everyone else's, because 22 collaborators is just absolutely crazy for a 15-track album. For 13, I am feeling a light 3 out of 10. If you have listened to this album, make sure to let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. You might be able to change my mind. If you haven't listened to it yet though, as usual, I have the Spotify link in the description so you can go check it out. Anyway, I'm 13, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.